Now, as you all know, Montgomery County is a great place to live. It's been my home since 1976. And as these statistics show, many residents experience great success here. But any good place can always be better, and that's what we're here to talk about. Our county spends more on our students than most other areas in the country. And there are more resources for every child. But while that may be comforting to parents, one of the issues dominating the news recently is alarming: mass shootings. They've created a fear for our school children, parents, and teachers. A quick look at the headlines appearing on MyMCM's website point to the areas of concern for everyone who attends and work in our county's school system: shootings, ghost guns. So our first question to the candidates is this: what can you do as county executive to help assure the safety of our children in school? We start alphabetically. Mr. Blair.
Well, thank you for tuning in. So as your county executive, job one has to be keeping you and your family safe. And unfortunately and tragically, we live in a country where individuals can buy ghost guns online. They can go to a gun show and buy a military-style weapon. So we have to do everything at the local level to keep you and your families and your children safe. The question is about schools. So school resource officers were put in place to prevent violent crimes. I know when I used to drop my daughter off at high school several years ago, it was reassuring knowing that there was a police officer there. It happened to be one of those years where there was many shootings across the country. So I believe we can do that in a healthy way to keep our children safe. But equally important, it's important to make sure that the children feel respected. And in no way were those school resource officers meant to enforce minor infractions or over-police our black and brown students. But I believe we can have it both ways, right? We have 26 high schools in Montgomery County. If it wasn't working in a few, let's fix it, right? So that our children are safe. The analogy that I would share, we have dozens of health clinics across the county. And if a few of them weren't working, we wouldn't just close them all down. No, we would get to the root cause and fix them, because I absolutely believe that we can keep our children safe and they can feel respected at the same time.
Mr. Elrich, you're next.
Yeah. I wish we had dozens of mental health clinics across the county. The county's done a number of things. When myself and the council last year looked at this issue, we wound up with a proposal that met the state standard for what we needed to do, which is keep the officers close to the schools, but they didn't have to be in the schools. They could check in with the schools. They were intended to be involved when there were police issues and issues that would actually be criminal. One of the problems that had happened with the SRO program was that 97% of what the police were used for were enforcement of school discipline rather than dealing with criminal activities. And that had created a great deal of angst, and I'll say anger, among both students and some of their parents. And that's why we looked to change the system. We also planned on putting in 2 social workers per high school, because I think everybody agrees these kids need, more than anything, more mental health supports than anything else. The school system tried, but could not hire the mental health care workers that they had planned on hiring. And not being able to hire them, along with the rising number of incidents in the school, led the school system to request that we modify the program. And I agreed to the modification. The superintendent, Dr. McKnight, came up with the proposal was that the officers would be in school, they would be in the building, but they would not patrol halls, and they would not, under any circumstances, enforce school discipline. With those parameters, I was comfortable with that for the rest of this year, and we'll talk about what happens when we see if they're able to hire the complement of social workers that they need. But I believe that we need the ability to respond to crime promptly and be able to deal with issues as they arise, but we also need to deal with the underlying mental health issues that many of the students are presenting, and COVID has made ever so much worse.
Peter James, you are next on school safety.
Yes, I do think having uniformed officers in schools a little chilling. By looking at the numbers, there's probably a lot more incidents that occur outside the school. I think we need to look a lot of the things that are affecting what's happening to society. We used to have open gyms when I was growing up in the county, and having more activities, having a mentorship of adults to give good role models. Maybe we see kids going, latchkey kids, basically getting involved with friends at homes where there's not parents, and they get into these activities like buying ghost guns and that sort of thing. I think maybe the size of our school system has a detrimental effect on the pecking order that goes on. So I'd like to look at different models like Montessori schools, where there's a smaller group of students that don't have, essentially we have small towns. Our high schools are 2,000 students. So I think reducing the size of the school. I definitely want to have police officers stations close to the school and a quick response that's well trained. I think we can also cross-train some of the staff in the school. There's AI apps now. If you go to Ginger.io and look at that, that's a way students can monitor their mental health and actually maybe use similar things to have the students sort of more aware of what they're doing as far as ostracizing certain students.
Thank you, Mr. James. Hans Riemer.
Well, thank you for the question. My wife Angela and I have two sons. They're 14 and 11, so we've got a rising high school student and a rising middle schooler. And I feel this issue very personally. In fact, I'm the only candidate in the race with kids in the schools. My oldest son will be going to a high school where there was a violent incident. And we've seen a proliferation of ghost guns. And we have to acknowledge that until we deal with this massive proliferation of weapons, there's going to be serious safety issues. However, I think we have to focus on violence prevention in our schools. And I've been volunteering with a group of parents. We go into my son's middle school, and we're just a friendly adult presence, not supervising, not enforcing rules, being there, talking, mentoring, helping kids see that there are supportive adults around them. To me, that's a good metaphor. We need better trained teachers and administrators. We need coaches. We need youth sports. Our kids are experiencing a crisis. We've been through a terrible time with COVID. They're stressed out. They're feeling very anxious about the world, and the adults that they see in the world are behaving poorly as well. And we need to meet this moment with a much bigger effort to make them safe. As I said, more youth sports, more social workers. The council has added significant funds for violence prevention teams in all of our high schools. But let's engage our kids in safety campaigns. We need to talk to them about sharing information with a trusted adult, because the kids know what's going on. When there's two kids who have a conflict that's going to brew into something significant, there are other kids that know, and we need our children to feel safe to share that information. That's the way we're really going to stop violence from occurring in our schools. And as your county executive, I'm going to put more investments in place and build a stronger safety campaign and a culture of safety with children, students, families, and all the professionals in our school buildings.
We've heard from the four Democrats. Now we turn to Republican. Mr. Sullivan, Reardon Sullivan.
Thank you for the question. I want to make sure that everybody understands how important school resource officers are in our schools. The school resource officers not only are in the schools as a leader and as a figure, they also develop relationships with the students that, as Hans was saying, can help head things off at the pass. There's been many stories where, because a student confided in a school resource officer, that things have been avoided. The importance of school resource officers was also brought to bear by the principals. There was a Zoom meeting a couple years ago where they had all of the principals in some of the local schools say that they wanted school resource officers in our schools. Unfortunately, the county council said, no, we're going to take school resource officers out of the schools. And that was, as I think we all see now, was truly a mistake. I think that we need to make sure that the gun laws that are on the books, that we accurately enforce them. As we all know, we have ghost guns are now illegal in Maryland. having a gun that has a serial number taken off of it, that's illegal in Maryland. We need to enforce the laws that are there. And to help enforce those laws, we need to make sure that the police are properly funded, that they're properly trained, and that the men and women of law enforcement get the respect that they deserve.